What is the Shart, the condition? So hopefully by now you know what is condition. Well, I say what is the condition, and then I will ask you probably some questions just to make sure that. So the condition and the rukun. One is condition, shart, it's called in Arabic, and the rukun is a pillar. Both of them, the matter that you are talking about, they are doing, any matter that needs a condition or a pillar. If the condition or the pillar are not met, are not there, if you don't do the condition or the pillar, then that matter will be invalid. Nothing to repair it, just like Salah. Salat, there is conditions and pillars. Condition is Wudu. Now, if someone doesn't do Wudu, there is nothing you can't do to ask him. Oh, you go and you don't go and ask the person. Go and do your sujud sahw. You tell him you did not pray at all. You have to pray again because wudu is a condition. Also, the recitation of Fatiha. The recitation of Fatiha is a pillar. So if you don't recite the Fatiha, you don't do sujud sahw. You have to repeat that rak'ah altogether because it's a pillar. Such as you go to Hajj. We have to know what is an obligation, what is condition, what is a pillar. Now a pillar is something that it can't be, there is no, like we call, remedy for it in the religion. That's why we call it pillar, to differentiate between it and what is an obligation. Obligation is different from pillar. So if someone, for example, in Hajj doesn't stand in Arafah, where the hadith says the Hajj is Arafah, I mean there is nothing you can do about it. Finish. The day of Arafah, you don't stand up in Arafah, you don't go to Arafah, that Hajj is invalid. There is, you slaughter, you do whatever you like, that Hajj is invalid. Finish. You have to do it again next year, stand up in Arafah. You understand? So that is the condition and the pillar. However, what is now the difference between condition and the pillar? Both of them will invalidate the action that you are doing if you don't do any action or the pillar. But what is the difference between them? The difference between them is that the pillar is part of the action. The condition is not. Wudu is not part of the Salah. Wudu is something and the Salah is something. Reciting Al-Fatiha is part of the Salah. That is a pillar. So if it's part of it, we call it a pillar. It's out of it, we call it a condition. So he says wudu, for example, is a condition for the Salah. Ruku' is a rukn in the Salah, is a pillar. So if you don't do ruku' in the Salah, you are not going to do sujud sahw. You are going to repeat, nullify all that rak'ah, not consider it. Let's say someone was praying, he forgot to do ruku'. So what he does, he will, he went straight away for the sujud. He just considered that prayer, that rak'ah, not to that, like he doesn't consider that rak'ah, doesn't count it, and start praying as if that rak'ah didn't happen. So continue while without considering that rak'ah. So he said because both of them are vital or important for the Salah to be sahih, right. But you can see the difference between them, that the condition is out of the prayer, not part of it, but the rukun, which is the pillar, is part of the Salah. So that is, I think, is clear, hopefully. Is it? Okay. So he says, now the condition, because we are talking about the conditions here, we are talking about the ahkam. So when we talk about the ahkam, we spoke about the ahkam taklifiyat, mukallaf, obligation, which is the mustahab, the mubah, the haram, and the makruh. This is 5 ahkam that mukallaf is every person mukallaf, who is mukallaf, he has this upon him. There is things that he has to do, things that he is required to do, but it's not obligation on him, or things that he is allowed to do. All these are 5 ahkam. And then we said that is the 5 things, and then there is ahkam wad'iyya. This ahkam wad'iyya is not wajib, it's the what we call the conditions, the causes, and the mani', things that stops you. This is not taklif. This is not taklif. You understand? They don't call it ahkam taklifiyya, the ahkam wad'iyya. So the religion has made this.
What is wad'iyya?
Wad'iyya is put. Wada'a, from the word wada'. So what it says here, when we are talking about, we have spoken before about the cause. So they say the cause sometimes has nothing to do with the person himself. It's like the time of the dhuhr start, you pray. It's not you who is going to start the time. Sometimes maybe you have some influence in it, you can do something, and the result, someone stealing, we cut his hand. He has done something, but that is not taklif. You don't call that taklif. That is just a cause. And the condition, so ahkam wad'iyya, ahkam taklifiyya, we spoke about it, and ahkam wad'iyya, which is the cause, the condition. Now we are with the condition. So he said the condition is divided into 2 categories. Depends on who made it a condition. So the condition is divided into 2 categories, depends on who made it a condition. If for the first category is what we call condition, Shar'i condition, by the religion. The religion made it a condition. He says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي جَعَلَتْهُ الشَّرِيعَةُ شَرْطًا. What the Sharia has made as a condition, not a human being. Such as the 1 year, that you have to wait for 1 year when you have an amount of money which has reached the nisab. I don't know the word nisab, what you can translate it, but when you have, we are talking just a general rule. I'm not going to comment on whether it is sahih or not sahih, or you understand, or what is the dalil for it, or what is it. Just to give it as an example from something that you know that if someone has an amount of money, it has reached certain limit of amount of money, which is gold or silver, then he has to wait for 1 year, and after 1 year he has to pay zakat from this money. This waiting for 1 year, they call it a condition. So he said this, it's the Sharia, according to what he said it's the Sharia that made this condition. It's not people who have decided this. And then, so that is, he called it Shart Shar'i. It's more clearer to say the wudu for the Salah. It is a condition. That is clear, because generally what he is trying here in this book, at his book, we know that he tries sometimes to bring dalil. However, because he has no dalil here except the ijma', so he didn't bring, normally every time he talks about something he bring dalil. It's better to bring dalil. Now we say shart, a condition which is made by the Sharia, is, for example, wudu for Salah. How did it become a condition? It became a condition by this hadith, the hadith of the Prophet, hadith of Abu Hurairah, that the Prophet said, لا يقبل الله صلاة من أحدث حتى يتوضأ. Allah will not accept the prayer of someone who has committed hadith, meaning broken his wudu, until he does wudu. So it's not a matter of do something. You see, pray, that is an order. an obligation. If you stand up for the prayer, wash your faces and your hand, that will be an order. If you are like the hadith of the Prophet, if you want the prayer of time, when prayer is due, do adhan and iqamah. Adhan and iqamah is not a condition. If you don't do adhan and iqamah, you are disobeying the Prophet, but your prayer is still valid. Why? Because there is no hadith that says there is no prayer for someone who has not done the adhan and iqamah. So this person will be doing something haram, but because there is no such hadith that says there is no prayer for. If someone prays now, and if someone doesn't do adhan and iqamah because he has forgotten, and then he prayed and then he remembered, we say there is nothing you can do about it. Finish. You have done no sin because you didn't. It was out of forgetfulness. It's not intentionally, and the time is gone. You do the adhan and iqamah before the prayer, not after the prayer. So there is nothing that you can do about it. It's finished, and there is no harm. But if someone prays and he doesn't do wudu, we say you have not done prayer, because the Prophet said Allah will not accept the prayer. So it's not, your prayer is not accepted. So what you have to do wudu and come back and pray. If he says, but Allah says, رَبَّنَا لَا تُؤَخِذْنَا إِن نَسِينَا وَأَخْطَأْنَا, oh Allah, forgive us if we forget or if we make a mistake. لَا جُنَاحَ عَلَيْكُمْ فِيمَا أَخْطَأْتُمْ بِهِ, there is no harm on what you have made a mistake. We say there is no harm. There is definitely no harm that you have prayed without wudu. We are not talking about harm. We are not talking about that you are sinful. We just say that there is no prayer. Now your prayer is not accepted. Now when you have forgotten, there is no sin. If you died without remembering, there is no sin because you have forgotten. Now that you have remembered and you know that your prayer is not accepted, now you have to do it. You see the difference between order, between wajib, which is the wudu, and which is the adhan and the iqamah, and the difference between a condition. Another example of the condition that is made by the Sharia. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا لَمْ يُذْكَرِ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ, don't eat from what the name of Allah has not been mentioned on. So someone has slaughtered according to that is because many people don't know the difference between obligation, between rukun, which is pillar, which people get confused and mixed up. You see, someone says, now Allah says don't eat from what the name of Allah has not been mentioned. The Shafi'is say doesn't matter. If you don't mention the name of Allah, whether intentionally or not intentionally, you can still eat. Yes, the Shafi'i himself and his followers. Now this hadith is clear. Allah says don't eat from what Allah's name has not been mentioned on. So he says it's fine. It's not just because he uses a hadith which is almost unanimously da'if, that says the slaughter of the Muslim is the name of Allah is on it, whether you mention it or you don't. Understand? So that hadith is almost unanimously da'if. It's very, very weak. So it's not like he went against the ayah intentionally or something. As for the other madhahib, including the Zahiris, they say you can't eat if you do it intentionally, but you can't eat if you do it. You can eat if you do it by mistake. And you can see the contradiction here with the wudu. They should have said wudu as well. But if you forget and do wudu by mistake, then your prayer is valid. But they didn't say that. That's because the ayah here, that is because the mistake of what is condition, what is not a condition. Here, if someone says, Allah says, there is no harm if you make a mistake, yeah, it's no harm. We don't say it's harm. When you slaughter it, you are supposed to say Bismillah. It's haram not to say Bismillah. So if you have slaughtered and you didn't say Bismillah, and by mistake, then it's not haram. but it's dead meat. Now you have to throw it away.
That's going to ask you. So you can't eat that meat.
You can't. It's haram. It's a condition. Don't eat from. He didn't say don't eat from the meat that has not been the name of Allah has not been mentioned by mistake. He said don't eat from what Allah's name has not been mentioned. So if you eat from it, you are now intentionally, you are disobeying Allah intentionally. If you eat by mistake, then it's fine. So that is a condition. That is a condition, but it is made by the Sharia. And any condition that is made by the Sharia is a condition that has to be taken. The second is a condition that is made by people. So, a condition that is made by people, not by their religion. People make conditions by themselves. People do make me conditions. So, what about these conditions? He says, وَهُوَ الَّذِي يَضَعُهُ النَّاسُ بِاخْتِيَارِهِمْ فِي تَصَرُّفَاتِهِمْ. He said this is the conditions that people choose to do it, to do them during their dealings. Not in the ibadah. Not in the ibadah, in the dealings. And we see that many people, the fuqaha, they see different. They consider different the dealings that they do generally. The marriage, the divorce, the selling, buying, the worship, which is prayer, hajj. So they call this ibadah. They call this muamalat. And different madhahib has different views. For example, the Ahnaf will say there is the majority. No, every madhab will agree that there is no, for example, qiyas in ibadah. Not salat, not hajj, not even though they do it sometimes, but they say there is no qiyas in ibadat. There is qiyas only in the muamalat, in the dealings amongst people. Understand? And so the difference between them is here you can see also they say during the ibadah you can't make any condition in the ibadah, but you can make conditions during in muamalat. So you say these conditions that they agree about in their agreements. He says the fuqaha have different opinions in this kind of conditions, whether it is valid or invalid. So some fuqaha, the fuqaha have different opinions, and there is not only one opinion, there is different opinions. Now he said some of them consider all the conditions to be invalid, such as the Zahiris. Not only that, they say if you make an agreement and in that agreement there is a condition, even the agreement is invalid. That is the Zahiris. There is some who say all the agreements, almost every agreement is valid. And there are some the conditions are the agreement itself is considered to be a condition. There is no anybody who accept every agreement. Of course there is agreements that are haram clearly, so but they say if it's not haram, then every agreement is, they are very open about agreements. You find this mostly with the Malikis. And there are some who say that there are some agreements that are right, some agreements that are invalid. And he said, now he chose this opinion, that some agreements are valid and some are invalid. He said, when you look at the dalil, at the proofs, then the agreements are divided into categories, two. First, the agreements that are okay, sahih, agreements that are valid. And he has, of course, when he talks like this, he has to bring dalil. Now we will see his dalil. He say, this agreement will be sahih. How do we know it is sahih? According to him, This is the madhab of the Hanbalis anyway. He said the agreement will be sahih if there is nothing in the religion that says it is haram. So what do they say? They say ibadah, the asl in the ibadah is tawqif. The asl in the muamala is that is halal until proven otherwise. So they say you don't do ibadah except the way the Prophet showed us to, like Salah, Hajj. You don't do anything extra. You just follow exactly the way it is. So anything that you add to it is invalid until proven otherwise. In the muamalat, they say it's the opposite. Everything is allowed until proven not to be allowed. That is how they divide it. This is the majority. No, this is the Hanbalis. And many of the other madhahib follow this, but it's not like it. But this is the madhab of Hanbalis. So he says, example, the condition that a seller will want, like a seller will want the use or the benefit of something that he has sold, as long as that is will not make the selling invalid. I'll give you an example because it's complicated. No, to ask, for example, I will sell to someone a house and say with the condition that I will use it from some, like I sell you a house and I say, this house I sold it to you, you can live in it, but with the condition that I have to, you don't take it now, you don't take it except you buy it now, it is yours now, you are paying me now, you are making the deal now, but you are not going to take it until after 2 months because I don't have place until I find a place. They will say this condition is valid. They will say, the Hanbalis will say, there is nothing in the book of Allah that make this condition invalid. The Zahiris have two different opinions. The others will say like the Hanbalis. Yes? The Zahiris will say, some of the Zahiris will say this condition is invalid. So the person, even though he made this agreement, he doesn't have to respect this agreement. Like he will take the house and tell the man, I don't know you, get out.
Because it's his property now.
Because it's his property. The other Zahiris, Ibn Hazm, specifically Ibn Hazm, he will say the whole agreement is invalid. We will mention his point of view why he came to this understanding. Of course, definitely the right thing here is only one of these two, what the Zahiris have said. What the others have said is clearly invalid, because they themselves, they will not keep one of, they will say the agreement is valid as long as it doesn't go against the agreement itself. Not only if it's halal, if it's, they will say it's halal for someone to let someone stay in his house for 2 months after he has sold it. But they say it's not about halal to let him stay. It's a question about making it as an agreement. Do you have to now let him stay? They say you have to because you have made this agreement. But the problem with them is that they contradict themselves a lot when it comes to this. For example, they will say, if the person, they make another condition. If the condition doesn't contradict the whole essence of the agreement. For example, someone selling someone a house. This house is yours, I sell it to you, but I will use it for 1,000 years. 4,000 for 2 months they will say it's fine. But for 1,000 a year, this person, why did he buy a house? I mean, he's not going even to, neither him, neither his children, neither his, you understand? Nobody is going to use it of his family. So what is the benefit of him buying it? So they say this agreement is invalid. But if it's invalid, then what is the limit? What is the, you understand? So now, how he come to this conclusion that this condition is valid? He came to this conclusion from this hadith. He said it is sahih, and this hadith is in Bukhari. And this the hadith of Jabir is in Bukhari and Muslim. He said, Jabir said, I was traveling with the Prophet, and I was on a camel, and this camel was tired. It doesn't walk quickly. So the Prophet came and hit the camel with a stick, and he made some dua for it. So it started running, walking quickly. So then he told Jabir, sell me this camel. So
Prophet told Jabir.
Yeah, told Jabir, sell me this camel. The camel was tired, very old, very. Then when the Prophet made dua, it became good. Now the Prophet told Jabir, sell me the camel. He said, I sold him the camel. Then, and I gave him a condition, made a condition that he will let me use it until I get back to Medina, because they are traveling. He said, then when we came to Medina, I came with the camel. So he gave me the money, and I left. So he called me. He said, come back. I didn't want to take your camel. I don't want to take your camel. Take your camel and the money. So here what he says, look, he sold the camel and he made a condition, and the Prophet accepted the condition. What is the answer for this? If you say, I don't take a condition. Now, this is clear. It helps their argument when they say you can make conditions. You understand that the Prophet has made this condition, and this condition. Now, for Ibn Hazm, for example, he can easily say this is in the book of Allah, but just for camel, because it mentions the camel. That is not true, because this is an action of the Prophet. You understand?
Yeah, but didn't he do the deal in Medina once he got to Medina?
Yeah.
So that's when the deal started.
No, he sold it when he was traveling.
What's the proof of that?
Because he sold it.
The selling is when you gave him the money.
No, the selling is not when you give the money. The selling is when you make.
The Prophet agreed to that when.
Well, that is what Jabir say. He said, I sold him. He said, sell me your camel. He said, I sold him the camel. The selling is, I tell you, sell me this, and you say, it's yours. Huh? That is the selling is done. Finish. I tell you, sell me this for £5. You say, I sold you this for £5. Now, exchanging or not exchanging, that is something that I have to do as soon as possible, as long as you required it. But if you don't care, or if you tell me, okay, just leave it for me, or that is the selling, the agreement, that is the selling.
Do some people not take this deal because they say the Prophet just wanted to give Jabir money because he gave him back the money?
No, but the Prophet, he made an agreement. He said, I sold. Selling. It's not playing. Selling is not a joke. You understand? Even if you want to give Jabir the money, he still. They made an agreement, and clearly you can't accuse Jabir for not knowing, for example, what he's selling. What you understand? He told him, so it's clearly that the Prophet made an agreement with him. So what he considered to be selling.
Because I heard this in another hadith as well. I think when they were bargaining.
Yeah.
They said this, and then they changed the price, and he was making it high or something like this.
No, Jabir, he didn't bargain. The Prophet added to him. He gave him extra.
Yeah.
He sold him and he gave him extra actually. And that extra money, he kept it always with him. That is the, he used to say this is the addition of the Prophet, so he kept with him as for barakah or something. He kept it until his death, until I think they took it from him when there was attack on Medina. That is different matter. The hadith here should be looked this way. First, he said, I sold him the camel. So he sold him the camel. Jabir, definitely selling and buying, people know what is selling and buying. Not only Jabir, everybody knows what is selling and buying. And Jabir, we will not accept his understanding of the religion. We want him to know, to explain to us what he understands. That is what we argue with him. But selling and buying, people, everybody, whether it is Jabir, whether it is Muslim, whether it is Kafir, everybody knows what's selling and buying. So he sold to the Prophet the camel. However, what they can say here, first, the religion doesn't come in one go. The religion doesn't come in one time. The religion comes in process, like bit by bit. So we don't know when Jabir did make this condition. Was it before the conditions were disallowed totally, or before? So we have a hadith from the Prophet, the saying of the Prophet that says there is no any condition that is in the religion is invalid. That hadith is the hadith of the Prophet. Yeah, any condition that is not in the book of Allah is invalid. That is hadith from the Prophet, saying of the Prophet, that is wahi, that is haqq, that is true. And then we have an action that Prophet have done. We don't know if it was before. If it was before, then it was at the time when it was halal and it became haram by the saying of the Prophet. So we are not going to leave something that the Prophet have said, which is wahi, which is religion, for an action that is doubtful.
This is just like the water.
Yeah, just like the drinking of water, just like any action that contradicts the saying of the Prophet, any action that the Prophet have done, that contradicts what he say, then we always have to go to what he has said rather than what he has done. That is one way to see it. The other thing, when he say, I sold him the camel, and then I made the condition, فَبِعْتُهُ فَاسْتَثْنَيْتُ. Sold, then made the condition. And that is, there is nothing wrong with that. I mean, that is, everybody agrees that if you buy something, if you don't make the condition within the agreement, then it's late. You understand? So if I sell you something and then later I say, yeah, but I want to use it, they will say, no, you have to say it when you sold me, not after. Yeah. So he said, I sold him and then I made first tathnaytu. So it looks like the condition was made later. And later you can make any condition you want.
That's not really a condition, it's just like a request.
Yeah, it's like a request. He can consider it to be...
No.
Yeah, he can say, no, we have made the deed, now the property is mine. And so after they have made the deed, he can let him. It's fine. The Prophet would have never, whether before he made the condition, before or after. Because when we say about making conditions, is not, let's say someone make a condition with a woman, talk to a woman and tell her whatever he wants about marriage. The marriage, people will consider the marriage to be invalid if during the marriage, they say, even those who say, for example, and we know like the marriage, a person should not request from a woman that he marry her for a few days or. But people will say, even though it is, they consider it to be disliked, they say, if during the marriage he say, I am going to marry with no conditions, not for a year or 2 years, they say, if this is what they say during the marriage, then what they have discussed before is a different matter. If a man marry a woman and he say, I am going to marry you and I'm going to give you the full earth of gold, but during the marriage he doesn't mention anything, then she is gone. She has nothing. She has to mention that during the agreement, not before, not after. The agreement is done when you are doing the agreement. So here the hadith of Jabir really he has no proof in it. So, and he says also, now so here he is trying to strengthen his proof, his madhab, that some conditions are allowed even if they are not in the book of Allah. The other, he says, whatever is mentioned regarding that the Prophet has forbidden that selling and condition, so this hadith is sahih, da'if. He said the hadith that says the Prophet, there is hadith that says naha nabiyu, the Prophet has forbidden bay'un, naha an bay'in wa shart, like selling and the condition with it. That hadith is da'if.
If it was sahih, he just use that.
If that hadith was sahih, you can't use it because the Prophet has forbidden.
Yeah.
What the Prophet did. Actually, we have hadith sahih in Bukhari that the Prophet says, whoever أيما رجل باع نخلا قد أبرت, whoever sells palm dates that has been already, I don't know what his ta'bir is to put the male and the female. The dates, if you don't put male and female together, it won't, the palm dates, it won't give you dates. Or it will give you something that is not useless. Something that is, you can't, it's useless. So people will put the male and female together. So the Prophet said, whoever have sold palm dates that has already been processed, then the dates will be for the buyer, for the seller, except if the buyer make a condition. Whoever sells a slave and he has property, like the slave own property, then the property will be for the seller unless the buyer requested, specify, meaning at the time when he is buying, not before, not after. Understand? So if he doesn't make this condition, then his what is, so here the hadith clearly shows that you can make a condition, but this condition is in the book of Allah because the Prophet said it. He says also,
so that condition is just specific to the dates and slave.
yeah, that's for the states and the slaves. Yeah. Any condition that is not in the book of Allah, really, the hadith is, we are coming to that. He says also, every condition that is known by the urf, by the custom, in any agreement, and it doesn't contradict any dalil, then this condition is sahih. Meaning, it's, you have to look at the custom of the people. This is specifically the hadith, the condition of, this is what the Hanbalis and many who follow them say. If it is known in the for example, in the custom of the people, or in the country you are living. For example, you rent a house and you live in the house, and you don't mention anything about the owner bringing wood for you during when it's cold, but it's known in that country that it is the duty of the landlord to provide hot water or whatever. So what you do is, when, even though you have not spoken about it in the agreement, or whether you speak about it in the agreement, they say it's valid. If you don't, if you speak about it in the agreement, they will say this is a condition that is in the book of Allah. Now it's not in the, it doesn't contradict the book of Allah. That he will, you pay for the house, you pay for the house, not you pay for the water. If you pay for the water, he is supposed to bring the water. But no, you pay for the house only. But you talk to him in the agreement that you have to do also this and this and that. And also, if you don't speak about it, but it is known, this is how the people of this country deal, then he say this condition, it's still valid. According to the Zahiris, all these conditions are invalid, in only condition that is in the book of Allah. You understand? So So he says now, so that is how he is talking. Of course, he has not mentioned any proofs here. We know here some people many use this kind of dalils. For example, we have here the people, the shuyukh of London. They say if you live in London and you came to London with a visa, even though the visa doesn't say that you don't have to do anything in this country, you have still to respect the law of the country to a certain extent, because it is the condition, it's known in the custom, in the urf, and that no country will give you visa except that with the condition that you will abide by the rules. So they say you have to abide by the rules, and they use this. There is a qaida fiqhiyya, a rule of fiqh. They say al-ma'rufu urfan kal-mashruti shartan. With the thing that is known in the custom is like something that is made, like made as a condition.
Do they agree that it doesn't have to apply if it's contrary to religion?
Yeah, if it contradicts the religion to a point where what contradicts the religion for them is bit, you understand? It has to really, like they will tell you do kufr, for example, don't pray. You understand? That is the. I will go probably to that area as well. What they say here. So they say what is the known as ma'ruf, known urfan in the custom, is like something that is made a condition. Kal mashruti shartan, something that is made a condition. This is a rule that the Hanbalis use, and it is widely known by the fuqaha, except for the Zahiris. They say there is no such thing as urf in the religion. Everybody, if he has to want something, that he has to first find out that it is allowed in the religion, and then he has to mention it as if this condition is in the book of Allah, then he has to mention it. If he doesn't mention it, then he has lost his right, unless this is a condition that Allah has made part of this agreement.
Like the seed and like the slave with man's property, like that.
Yes, that is the hadith, for example. Or marriage, if a woman make a condition that she will not marry this man unless he pay her, he give her a country, the full country. Yeah, that is something that is not in the book of Allah, that he has to pay mahr without limit. So if he make this condition, then he has to fulfill this condition. It's in the book of Allah. So this is that he pay mahr.
No. Okay, what about the bit with after divorce? You know, in Egypt they do a lot of that.
No. There is mahr. There is mahr, and then if she want to allow him, if she say, I want this kind of mahr, I will take now part of it. No, that is muakhar. It's not in the book of Allah, so he doesn't have to. But he has to pay her. He has to pay her something. Other thing which is called mut'a. When a man divorces a woman, he has to pay her mut'a anyway. Anyway, so anything that is not in the condition of Allah, in the book of Allah, this is what how the Zahiri said, that you don't have to respect it. When we say it's invalid, is invalid. Not every invalid is haram, but invalid, sometimes invalid means you don't have to respect it. Even if you say it, you don't have to do it. You understand? So we said when here they talk, for example, of course the Zahiris really don't have a problem with this rule, that every custom, what is known as a custom, is it's a tradition, is like a condition. You understand? So the Zahiris don't have a problem with this, because they consider both of it to be invalid, so it is the same, yes, as long as it's not in the book of Allah. So the others will say both of them are obligatory to fulfill, and the Zahiris say both of them are not to be fulfilled, and therefore they are similar as well for the Zahiris. Here, for example, I give you example today with the fuqaha in London, for example, whether jihadist or no jihadist. When they say it's fine to do whatever you do outside London, but when for London, for example, they say those who live in London with a visa, they have to respect this agreement. And their proofs is that there is a hadith in Muslim that Hudayfa say that he came with his father. He said, me and my father Abi Husayl, we went to Medina, to immigrate to Medina. The kuffar stopped us. And then they took from us an agreement. They made us swear that we will not help the Prophet in his wars against them. He said then, at the Battle of Badr, we tried to join the Prophet, but we told the Prophet this agreement, what we swear to the kuffar, like maybe the kuffar agreement. He said then the Prophet told us, go away, we will keep their agreement, and we seek the help of Allah against them. Why? This hadith is in Muslim. Why this hadith is da'if and weird? Because this hadith is the narration of Al-Walid ibn Jumay' from Abi Tufayl. This Al-Walid ibn Jumay' bring from Abi Tufayl, narrates from Abi Tufayl. Abi Tufayl is considered to be a small Sahabi. We don't know if he's Sahabi or not. According to him, he said that he saw the Prophet from somewhere. Maybe he's the Prophet, not the Prophet, we don't know. Ibn Abbas asked him, did you see the Prophet? He said, I saw an old man, people around him asking him questions. Ibn Abbas said that was the Prophet. So only he can remember that he saw the Prophet. So to call him Sahabi is a bit... Ibn Hazm accuses him of something that we don't know he has done or not. That he was fighting with Al-Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid. Al-Mukhtar ibn Abi Ubaid, someone who was helping Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Later, according to people, that he started saying, making claims that he get wahy. So they say he was the leader of his army. If he was, then of course it will be something can be used against him. However, we don't have that proof. I don't know where Ibn Hazm got it from. He might got it from someone who is a liar, or he didn't say it with the clear isnad. However, the hadith itself, these two people, when they are in isnad, always you can find the hadith is weird. First,
say the names again.
Al-Walid ibn Jumay' from Abi Tufayl. Now, first, why this hadith is weird? Abu Hudayfa is making hijrah into Medina, and then the kuffar of Quraysh, they will tell him, they take from him the agreement that they will not fight, they will not help the Prophet in his wars against them. How did they predict that there will be wars between them and the Prophet? That is one. Okay, maybe they are very intelligent, they can see in the future or something. But okay, the Prophet actually, when he went to the battle of Badr, according to Ka'b ibn Malik and according to many hadith, he was not going to the fight. Hudayfa was in Medina, he was not going to the fight. He was going to get the camels, the caravan. And then the kuffar came and then the battle started. So it wasn't in the Medina, people didn't know that these people, if they knew that there was a battle, more people would have gone. Not only that number of people. That is another weird thing. And the most weird thing in this hadith, why would Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman and his father immigrate from Mecca when they are already residents of Medina because they are from the Ansar? This is all make this hadith very weird. So this hadith is da'if. If this hadith was sahih, then this hadith would have been abrogated, because the ayah of Surat Bara'ah, this is Battle of Badr, at the very early stage in the hijrah of Medina, at the first year, and the hadith, the ayah in Surat Bara'ah, where it says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَيْفَ يَكُونُ لِلْمُشْرِكِينَ عَهْدٌ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ وَعِنْدَ رَسُولِهِ. How can there be an agreement between the mushrikeen and Allah and His Prophet when they don't respect their agreement? Why there will be agreement with them? For Allah and His Prophet. So that ayah in Surah Bara'ah, which was revealed in the 9th year, 8 years later, has abrogated every agreement. And Barira, who was actually in Medina when the Prophet said every condition that is not in the book of Allah, the Prophet said this after the 8th year, because Ibn Abbas is describing what he saw in there. He was in there at the time, and when the Prophet said every condition that is not in the book of Allah is invalid. Al-Abbas bin Abdul Muttalib and Ibn Abbas were there, and they never immigrated to Medina except after the 8th year. So every agreement before that, whether that hadith or the hadith of Marwan bin Hakam and Al-Miswar bin Makhrama, where the Prophet made an agreement with the kuffar and he gave them as part of the agreement, he has to send some Muslims who ran away, he had to give them back. That hadith as well, whatever he has done there, he has been abrogated with Surah Bara'ah and with this hadith, because that was in the 6th year before the conquest of Mecca. And even without that, we know that the Prophet has made the agreement that he will give up anyone who comes to him, man and woman. But the 2nd year, as soon as the ayah came and forbade the Prophet to send back the woman, the Prophet didn't care about that agreement and he refused to send any woman back. And then later came the ayat that says that all the agreements are invalid. So this is the answer for this Shaykh of London who say that you have to respect. Now he gives his dalil. What is his dalil? That the condition has to be respected. So he says the dalil that the conditions are sahih and valid and to be respected, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu awfu bil uqud. O you who believe, fulfill your agreements. Now, how the Zahiris put this? The Zahiris say any agreement, the agreement, you make an agreement for the future. You don't make agreement for the past. So agreement is only for the future. That I will do this later, tomorrow, after tomorrow. The Zahiris say if you make an agreement and you make the agreement according to the book of Allah, that the agreement is not a condition, then it's not. Then they say if you make an agreement to say someone, I will give you £1 later, tomorrow. I will give you something after tomorrow. You do this, I give you this, or whatever. They say you can't do that except by saying inshallah. Because Allah says, وَلَا تَقُولَنَّ لِشَيْءٍ إِنِّي فَاعِلٌ ذَلِكَ غَدًا إِلَّا أَنْ يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ. You have to say inshallah. They say if you don't say inshallah, then it is invalid, because you didn't do it exactly the way Allah said. They say if you say inshallah, then it is not anymore your decision. If it happens that you change your mind, that means Allah doesn't want it to happen. So they say in all cases, you don't have to fulfill the agreement. No, it's not tadlis. They say if someone says to someone, I am going to give you this, or I am going to do this to you, then unless it is part of an agreement which is in the book of Allah, such as marriage or selling, or because you are selling or something, you take something for something, then you don't have to fulfill this agreement. This is not only the Zahiris, this is the whole madhab. Say this. All the madhab, they say if someone say to someone, I'm going to give you something tomorrow, you don't have to give it. This is the Malikis and the Ahnaf and the Shafi'is and the Hanbalis.
Yeah, isn't that like a promise?
No, that is a promise. And then some people say, okay, so what is the meaning of the hadith that إِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفْ? When he gives a promise, he doesn't, the alamat of the munafiq, when he say إِذَا وَعَدَ أَخْلَفْ, he gives promise and then he doesn't fulfill the promise. That is for someone who at the time when he makes the promise knows that he is not going to do it. Like he is making promise, but he at the time when he is lying, he is saying I'm going to do this to you, but he is, however, or
What's the dalil for that?
Or any promise that is in the book of Allah. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, that's true, that Allah said, أوفوا بالعقود. Yeah? And like the ayah that says, وأوفوا بالعهد إن العهد كان مسؤولا, and fulfill the agreement. But what is kind of ahd? Allah's in the other ayah, which is just like similar ayah, He says, وأوفوا بعهد الله, the Allah agreement, not any agreement. And the Allah agreement is the agreement that is in the Quran and Sunnah. So if you make an agreement which is binding by the Quran and Sunnah, that is the ahd that you have to fulfill, not any ahd. So if someone is
وبعد آية أدوا الأمانات إلى أهلها.
إن الله يأمركم أن تؤدوا, you have to, the amana is in the book of Allah that you have to give the amana.
But that's part of a promise.
No, that is promise. No, promise.
That's like saying I promise I'll give you your mobile phone tomorrow.
Yeah, and then tomorrow I have to say like this. I have to give you tomorrow a mobile phone, inshallah.
Yeah.
And I am sincere now. Tomorrow, I just thought about it. I thought, he doesn't deserve mobile phone. He is rich.
Your mobile phone. Your mobile phone.
Yeah.
So it's yours. Forget me giving you one.
Yeah.
It's yours.
How am I?
Amana.
Yeah, you have to give the amana.
Yeah.
The amana.
That's still a promise.
Yeah, you do. You promise or you don't. The amana, you have to give it anyway. The amana is Allah says, "Inna Allah ya'murukum an tu'addu al-amanati ila ahliha."
I changed my mind.
Yeah, there is nothing wrong with it. You just ordered him to. This is actually even though it might look weird. This is the whole madhahib agree about this, except for the Malikis. The Malikis, like some Malikis say, if you tell someone, I am going to do something, and as a result of your saying, he does, you make him into, he might do something because of your promise. You say to someone, I am going to help you into your marriage. So what he does, he goes and asks a woman for marriage, and he spends money. And then, or you tell him, I am going to help you, I am going to give you 20,000. He goes and pay 5,000 deposit for the car. They say, in this case, you have to.
The
Malikis say.
Yeah, that can't be right.
No.
If you promise someone you're going to give him something and then he goes spends his money and then he...
Well, he should.
That's why.
Well, if he study fiqh, then he will know that he doesn't have, the person doesn't have to give him. Then he will not spend. Yes.
Yes, what the madam says, if you make a promise, you have to keep.
That's what I have for.
No, but if you make a promise, is your promise, is it going to change anything from the religion? Is it going to make something which is not obligation? Is it going to make something which is not haram? Ya ayyuhan nabiyyu lima tuharrimu ma ahallallahu lak.
But there's dalil about the promise. There's loads of dalil about the promise. That's why they always taught us when you promise.
Yeah, that is yeah.
That's why they say don't say I promise. Say inshallah I'll try.
Yeah, that is what you have to say. You have to say inshallah.
Yeah, I will try to do this.
Yeah, inshallah I will give you. And then look, Allah didn't want to.
No.
So,
you haven't got me that one.
Okay, it's fine. I am not here to give you to make you believe what I believe. It's just I give you now what they say, what I believe, and then it's up to you to make your decision afterwards. Okay, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَوْفُوا بِالْعَهْدِ إِنَّ الْعَهْدَ مَسْئُولًا. This also the dalil that Allah say fulfill the agreement, because it is mas'ul, asked for. You understand? So also the answer for this is Allah says in the other ayah, وَأَوْفُوا بِعَهْدِ اللَّهِ, fulfill the ahd of Allah, the agreement of Allah, that Allah has allowed, not the one that is contrary. This is not in the book of Allah. And he mentions here the hadith which is that the Prophet said, أَحَقُّ الشُّرُوطِ أَن تُوَفُّوا بِهِ مَا اسْتَحْلَلْتُمْ بِهِ الْفُرُوجِ. The most important, this is in Bukhari and Muslim, that the most binding conditions are the ones that you make woman halal with. So this hadith, people take it as if a woman, for example, ask her husband not to marry again, they say that it is for this man, it is forbidden to get married, because it is, you made with this condition, you made this woman halal for you. أحق الشروط, the most binding conditions are the ones that you make the private parts of woman halal for you. Yeah. So they say this hadith is clear. The Zahiris say no, this is the condition that are in the book of Allah. So if you give a woman, for example, a mahr, that mahr you have to give her. If you tell her, I am going to marry you for such and such amount of money, you have to give that amount of money. Not if you tell the woman, I am going to become your slave, or if you tell the woman, I am going to not marry ever, or a woman says to her husband, even if you die now after the marriage, I am forbidden for other men forever. All these conditions are invalid. Or if she say that we are going to marry for 2 hours, or if you say that you marry, I marry your daughter with the condition you marry my daughter or my granddaughter or whatever. All these conditions, the Zahiris say, are invalid. The majority pick and choose. Say some of them are sahih, valid, and some just based on opinions. So that is the conditions that we say all are invalid. Now he goes to the part that he says the conditions that are invalid. He considers such conditions to be valid. Now he goes to the part where he says conditions that are invalid. He says وَشَرْطٌ بَاطِل, condition which is invalid. He says if it is known to be invalid, if the Sharia made it invalid, something in the Sharia make it invalid. He said the example is the Hadith of Aisha. Aisha, a slave came to Aisha and said that I have written an agreement with my owners. Now mukataba is in the book of Allah. Allah says in the Quran, mukataba, a slave, he goes to his masters and say, I want to buy myself. They will say, you are worth in the market so and so. If you pay us this money, we let you free. Allah said in the Quran, فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. If you have slave and you know good in him, such as if he is Muslim, there is good in him. So he said, if they seek writing, write with them. Allah says this in the Quran. The Zahiris take it as an obligation. The majority take it as not an obligation, because they say everybody has the right to do whatever he likes with his property. So Allah, it's an order from Allah. فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ. Now this woman Barira.
فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ شِئْتُمْ.
No, not in شئتم. فَكَاتِبُوهُمْ إِنْ عَلِمْتُمْ فِيهِمْ خَيْرًا. There is no in if you want. It's an obligation to set free the.
If he's a Muslim,
yeah,
then you have to buy the kafir slave.
Yeah, if
it's not good.
There is no the kafir slave. There is a good in him. If you good in him is inclining towards Islam, for example, or helping the Muslims.
Yeah, but maybe he's Muslim, but you think that he's got no khair in him.
No, there is no Muslim who has no khair in him. La ilaha illallah is khair by itself.
Yeah, that's true. But what about this?
Yeah, Allah said khair. He didn't say the whole good. He said good. So there is good in him. So if a Muslim seek you have to let him.
Yeah.
However, he has to pay this amount of money, and Allah made provision for him. For example, zakat. One of the types of people who deserve zakat is fir riqab, the slaves. So this woman have decided with her masters that they will sell her to herself for 9 uqiyah. 9 is a measure of gold. She went to Aisha. They told her every year you pay 1 uqiyah. It's not a small amount of money. So she has first to work for them. She has to do that because she is slave. She has to do it for free. So she can work extra. I mean, they can't force her to work more than she can bear, but she can force herself to work extra, or she can go and ask other people to pay her, and this money will be just for the payment. So she went to Aisha and asked her to help her. Aisha said, I will. If you want, I can give you 9 uqiyah. She said, fine. She went to her masters. They said, yes, we will sell you. But when you are free, you have your loyalty to us. So Aisha, what is known generally, if someone frees someone, his loyalty will be for someone who freed him. When Aisha said this to the Prophet,
This is Jahiliyyah. Oh.
that was something that was always, all the time, and Islam did not change it, such as Hajj or...
So this is our
No, something that is known from the Jahiliyyah. It's not a question of Arf. Huh? So, something that the religion did not say anything about it until that time. Or probably the religion has already spoken about it. We don't know that, but we don't know any hadith that says either. But later the Prophet said, Al-wala'u liman a'taq, that loyalty for someone who frees. Now, when Aisha complained to the Prophet, she said, these people are seeking this condition that I will pay and they will have the loyalty of the woman. The Prophet said, doesn't matter. Like, if they seek it, if they say, we want, they make this condition, don't disagree with them. Let them make conditions. It will be invalid anyway. You understand? Yes. So he said, if they seek the condition, this condition, give it to them. Like, don't say no, don't object. And then he stood up and said, what is wrong with people making conditions that are not in the book of Allah? Whoever make a condition that is not in the book of Allah, then it is invalid. He didn't say what is wrong with the people making the condition that contradict the book of Allah. He could have said that, but he didn't. He said that are not in the book of Allah.
what's the difference?
Are not in the book of Allah and contradict the book of Allah. There are some conditions that are not in the book of Allah and don't contradict the book of Allah. Like, for example, I buy the house from you. This is my property. I can live in it. But I can say, after I bought it, I can say, you can live for it. It's mine. You can live for it as long as you like. If you make it as a condition that is not in the book of Allah, it doesn't contradict the book of Allah. If it contradicts the book of Allah, then I can't do it at all.
So
I can marry a woman and live with her in the house of her father. It doesn't contradict the book of Allah. But she can make condition that you have to marry me and live in the house of my father. I don't have to. You see the difference between it's in the book of Allah and contradict the book of Allah? If you can't see that, what can I do more?
the only ones conditions which are not valid are the ones that contradict what's in the book.
No, this is what they say.
No, I'm saying what's he saying.
Yeah, but that's what he's saying. But we say here, the Prophet when he spoke, he didn't say any condition that contradict the book of Allah.
No, I know.
He said any contradict that is not in the book of Allah.
No, that's clear to me. I'm saying what he's saying here
Yeah.
is
So
only time that the condition is not valid if it contradicts the book of Allah. That's what he's saying.
yes,
Otherwise, if it doesn't contradict it, then there's nothing.
then it's fine.
But then again, there's pick and choose on that one.
So, but the Prophet here said any condition that is not in the book of Allah, then it's invalid. You understand? Even if it's 100 conditions, he said the condition of Allah is more worthy, and the condition of Allah is more strong.
Is it that كل شرط فليس في كتابه?
Yes. So this hadith here, there where the Zahiris differs. The majority take this hadith, they say we don't take it literally. Not in the book of Allah, they say means contradict the book of Allah. That is the four madhahib. The Zahiris say we take it literally. However, then they will say the majority of the Zahiris, other madhahib follow the Zahiris little bit in this, some of the other madhahib. The Zahiris then we say the condition is invalid, but the agreement is valid. You understand?
Yeah.
Some Zahir says.
Yes. the majority of the Zahiris will say the condition is invalid, but the agreement is valid. Like a man,
Like the marriage thing.
like a man telling his woman, marrying a woman with the condition that he will never marry another wife. He will never marry with her another wife. The majority of the Zahiris, they say marriage is standing, is fine, and that agreement is invalid. You don't have to fulfill it.
The condition.
Yes, the condition. You understand? And their dalil is this, that the Prophet told Aisha, accept their condition, but it will be invalid anyway. You understand? So they say the agreement is valid, the condition is invalid. This is the majority of the Zahiris. Ibn Hazm say no. Ibn Hazm say the marriage is invalid and the condition is invalid. We are not talking about someone talking with his woman, making some arrangement before the marriage. No, they say what you do during what you talk during the agreement, not what they have spoken before. That is something extra.
What's Ibn Hazm's dalil on this?
Ibn Hazm dalil on this, he say, look, this marriage, this condition is not going to be right. This agreement has been made to be right with the condition. Like this, when they have spoken, they have said this marriage will not be valid unless so and so happens. So it will not happen except with that condition. If that condition is not there, everything is destroyed. You understand? And then if you give him the hadith, he will say, I don't contradict the hadith. The Prophet spoke to Aisha and told her, accept their condition first, and then he went out, and then came the wahi, because he didn't say to Aisha the hadith, every condition. He said every condition that is not in the book of Allah came later. So whatever he said to Aisha, that was before this, even though it was just like talking about with Aisha and going out, he will say, it doesn't even say how long it was between his talk and going to the mosque and making the speech, that every condition. He says, so that is, we take it as the condition came later, and therefore, and the answer for Ibn Hazm is this, if the hadith came later and the Prophet didn't know it, why did he say to Aisha, give them the condition? It will not be valid anyway if he didn't know about this hadith. You understand? However, he has some strong argument here when he says against everybody, against the Zahiris and the others, when they say, okay, someone marrying a woman for 2 days, everybody will say this marriage is invalid, not valid, and it has to be continuous. They will say, because of the condition, that the whole marriage is invalid. You understand?
They don't say it, yeah.
So also they will say, if someone marries a woman, for example, marriage of shigar, the Prophet has forbidden the shigar. We don't have clear hadith why, but the Prophet has forbidden, just like this. But the four madhahib will say, if someone says to someone, I marry your sister, you marry my sister, no mentioning of mahr, they will say the marriage is invalid. You understand? So here, because he made a condition.
Well, that's because he didn't mention the mahr, isn't it?
Yeah, but the mahr, mentioning the mahr is not something that will invalidate the marriage anyway, because the Prophet, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said,
There is a condition in Kitab.
yeah, but it's not, if you don't mention it, the marriage is valid.
How?
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُ, if you marry a woman and you divorce them without mentioning the mahr, without mentioning a mahr.
No, I'm not saying talaq. I'm saying if you marry them.
Yeah, but Allah says if you divorce them, if you divorce a woman and you have not mentioned any mahr, that's mean divorce can't happen except after marriage. So that means sometime marriage can happen without mahr.
Well, that means that marriage was valid then.
No,
That contradicts Ibn Hazm.
no, the marriage can happen without mahr. There is nothing
Without mentioning.
without mentioning a mahr. There is nothing to show that marriage will not happen without mentioning of mahr. All it says, the hadith, the Quran tell us that if you mention a mahr, you have to give it. But it doesn't say that if you don't mention mahr,
Marriage is invalid.
that the marriage is invalid. You
But mahr is a condition.
the dalil.
Mahr is condition of a marriage.
No, it is not a condition. You can't make it as a condition.
Mahr is a
Yes.
condition.
No, it's not a condition in the marriage. If it was a condition in the marriage will be invalid if without it.
So what is mahr then? What?
A mahar is something that the woman is allowed to seek. To make a woman is allowed to make a condition that a certain amount of money is paid to her in the marriage.
If she doesn't ask for mahar,
If she doesn't ask for mahar,
contract is enough.
the contract is valid. The Quran says, huh?
You don't have to call it mahar.
Huh?
You don't even have to call it mahar. It can be anything.
No, the mahar can be anything, but the Quran, since the Quran said that وَإِن طَلَّقْتُمُوهُنَّ the Quran says about talaq, it says وَلَمْ تَفْرِضُوا لَهُنَّ فَرِيضًا, without giving them a mahar. So if someone divorce a woman and he doesn't mention a mahar, if Allah call it divorce, then that divorce happened after the marriage.
Okay.
You understand? Here is not about making extra. Even if you put it against Ibn Hazm, you can't put it against Ibn Hazm, you can't put it against everybody. Because here is not about making a condition that is not in the book of Allah. Here is question of not mentioning a condition at all. You understand? If you consider it to be a condition, here is not to talk about it's a condition but nobody has spoken about it, or he didn't mention it in the marriage. However, it doesn't look like this.
It's mentioned in the ayah, it shows there is a condition. Or it's saying that if you didn't mention that condition,
No.
what you do.
If you were here before, you would have known what is the difference between a condition and which is not a condition. The Quran, it would have been a condition if the Quran, if the Prophet said there is no marriage without mahr. So you see the hadith that says la nikaha illa bi wali, there is no marriage except with wali, that will make it a condition. But because there is no, if the hadith says there is no marriage without mahr, that will make it a condition.
But there was
What do you consider the mahr? What do you consider mahr? Condition or?
No, it's not. You don't consider it a condition. Condition will invalidate the act altogether.
What is it? What is it?
Mahr is something in the that you can. Yes. آتُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ إِذَا أَتَيْتُمُوهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ. That is for the بإذن أهلهن. There is some type of woman that you have to give them their mahr. And there are some type. What is the ayah that says فَآتُهُنَّ أُجُورَهُنَّ?
I'm trying to remember it.
Yeah. من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم إذا آتيتموهن. Yeah. Other ayah, it says آتوا النساء صدقاتهن نحلة. Yeah. Give the woman their sadaqat. What is sadaqat? The things that you have agreed with them to pay. You didn't agree to pay, you don't give anything. That is for the woman, general woman. The woman of the Ahl Kitab is not allowed. You are not allowed to marry the woman of Ahl Kitab, for example, except that if you give her a mahr.
So mahr is a condition only with the
Al-Kitab.
That is a condition when you marry Ahl Kitab, when you marry a slave. But with woman, if you don't mention when you marry a woman, any Muslim woman, when you marry her, if you don't mention the mahr, then the marriage is valid. No.
Okay,
They agree that the fact if someone has married, the madhahib agree if someone is married and he has not mentioned the mahr, and then there is a dispute, then that the woman should the mahr should be equal to someone like her from her level of life, from her
like
caste.
someone else who got married for her, how much the mahar paid for her.
They say if someone, they don't say the marriage is invalid. They say a woman is married, no mentioning of mahar.
She's married.
Yes.
That's what the madhab.
Yes. Now she seek the mahar. What the mahar it will be given is you have to check the woman of her caste, because they deal with people like there is classes, you understand? So they say, and there is actually hadith of Ibn Mas'ud in Bukhari which might help them. They say that you have to look at the woman. Is she from the rich people? Is she from normal people? Is she from the poor people? A woman like her class, how much she is worth. So you have to give her the same thing. This is what the madhab says.
Give her evaluation.
Yes. The hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, which is in Bukhari, give the same dalil. Well, we still 15 minutes. The hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, which is in Bukhari, that hadith is narrated by Abu Qais al-Awdi from Hazil ibn Shurahbil from Ibn Abbas. Bukhari narrates two hadith from this kind, this isnad. Many people have spoken about Abu Qais al-Awdi or Hazil ibn Shurahbil. Sufyan al-Thawri and others, they say, I don't know. Yahya ibn Sa'id al-Qattan, we say, we don't know what is Abu Qais from Hazil ibn Shurahbil. Why? He narrates some hadith that are weird. One of them is this, that Ibn Mas'ud was asked to judge about this case, a woman who has not been given. He said that should be given the mahar equal to woman like. Actually someone testified that this is the hukm of the Prophet, this is how the Prophet has judged. But because it's the narration of Abu Qais al-Awdi, Abdurrahman bin Tharwan, who is considered to be weak, then even though the hadith is in Bukhari, is considered to be weak, this man narrated, this Abu Qais from Hazil bin Shurahbil narrated the hadith from Al-Mughira bin Shu'bah, that the Prophet wiped over his socks, not in the khuf. Understand? And this hadith is considered to be weak by the majority. So if it's the same isnad,
and you still take that.
the fact that it is in Bukhari doesn't make the change the fact that it's the same person, whether he is trustworthy or not. If he is trustworthy, take this hadith about that the Prophet wiped over the socks. If it's not, if he's da'if, wherever you can't find him. Because they say, it is known that Al-Mughira ibn Shu'bah said the Prophet wiped over the khuf, not the socks. So this man, it looks like he doesn't know what he is saying. And the Prophet, actually the Madahib say also, they consider it to be an obligation on the marriage. That they say if the marriage is done without mahr, it's fine. But the Hanbali, the Malikis say the mahr has to be done. You have to have a mahr, and the Ahnaf as well. And they say it has to be at least either 10 dirham or quarter of a dirham. And their proof is qiyas. They say because the hand of a Muslim is haram. How it becomes halal? To cut. If he steals rubu' dinar or
more,
and according to some the Ahnaf, 10 dirham. They say now for this hand to be halal, if he steals this amount of money, this woman is haram, her private part is haram. How it becomes halal for the man? If he gives the same amount of money. That is qiyas.
They put themselves in a trap.
Huh?
They put themselves in a trap.
This is they make themselves laughing stock. The hadith in Bukhari is clear that the Prophet asked the man to get a ring from iron. No one says that in that time a ring of iron will be equal to a quarter of a dinar of gold or 10 dirham of silver. Who says that? I mean, just 1 dirham of silver, if you put a hole in it and then you put it like this will be more expensive than all the iron that they had. You understand? However, when he couldn't, even he ordered him just to teach the woman some Quran.
So with that thing about Ibn Hazm, what opinion do you follow? Because I don't really agree with that. I'd go more towards the other that I really understand.
I will think that the agreement, I'm not sure about what he says, but the agreement is binding,
Yeah.
and the condition is invalid.
Yeah.
That's how it looks.
That's how
That is, with this hadith from Aisha that he uses.
That says the agreement will be invalid if the condition is
Yes.
invalid.
Yes.
It's only saying that the condition is not valid
Yes.
if it's not in the book of Allah.
Yes. So the condition is invalid. Yes.
The agreement is still valid.
Yeah. Well, this is more than this. He says here the meaning. He says the meaning of the condition is in the book of Allah, or it is that it means. It doesn't mean that it is in the book of Allah. It's not in the book of Allah. He says what he means here. The Prophet means that it is allowed. It is doesn't. Yeah, that's what he says. He says this what he means. He doesn't mean that any condition that is not in the book of Allah. He means that any condition that doesn't contradict the book of Allah. He says, so this is what it means. He says this is the madhab of the Hanbalis and another group of the fuqaha. He says it is better and clearer and also more makes sense when we look at the mafasid and the masalih, to look at the masalih, the things that are good for the people, what is good for the people, what is bad for the people, what is good for society. Yes. He says, however, there is another madhab here that we will talk about, but it's time for Isha, so inshallah we'll continue next week.
They follow the majority of...
No, they follow the madhab of the Hanbalis.
Okay.
That this any condition that contradict the book of Allah. And Ibn Taymiyyah actually, Ibn Qayyim, he speaks about it very strongly, because he said this condition, it makes people in very tight position. He says it's better to let people have the conditions. He says if you don't allow people to do the conditions, then most of these dealings will be haram. And if you look at it in a way, but inshallah we will give more examples next week, because if such as renting, where renting comes from, because selling is halal in the book of Allah. Okay, what about renting? What about so we'll continue inshallah next week.